So before we start, I have to give you a disclaimer so that you know that you don't need to read that. 2 points here. The first one is that everything you're going to hear today, well, from me, it's my personal opinion. So I perfectly prepared to see that faces, to see that, that looks on your faces by the end of the talk. And second, you know this movie, right? Okay. And second, don't try what you're going to hear today at your projects and your companies. It may not work. So I will skip these two phrases, these two phrases before my claims and after them. So I'm not going to say in my opinion. So everything I say, it's in my opinion. And I'm not going to say, but it may not work for you. It may not work for you. Just assume it. I'll just skip that part to make the talk more provocative. But remember, I do mean them. I will explain you, I'll show you, I'll demonstrate you how we, in my company, we decide how much to pay programmers. So how do we make that decision? How much each programmer costs? And the company I built, the company I work for is called Zerocracy. It's a platform. I'll just explain how it works for those who don't know. It's still in development, so it's not publicly on the market. We're just getting ready to put it on the market. But we've been practicing it for over 6 years, the things I will explain later. So it's a platform for programmers to help programmers work in distributed projects in a better way than they work right now. So imagine you are a programmer. You join the platform, you sign up, you pick up the project which you like, you apply for it. The project looks at your application and makes a decision. If you're good for the project, they just accept you. And then, when you're accepted, you start getting tasks from the platform. So our automated coordinator, dispatcher of tasks will drop you tasks and ask you to complete them. Then you complete or you don't complete. If you complete, the platform pays you. If you don't complete, the platform doesn't pay you. So there's no manager in front of you. There are no meetings, no scrum, no stand-up in the morning, no managers. They're just tasks. You're just getting tasks from the project and you're returning back your results. That's how it works. And it's to be launched soon. We've been saying it for almost a year, but it will be launched. So, so there are 4 things which are quite unique for our platform, for our management style, not just the platform, but the management style. First of all, there are no talks. So people don't talk to each other like they do in normal projects. There are no meetings, no phone calls, no emails, no Slack, no Skype, no Telegram, nothing. So there are no chats. You cannot talk to your programmer who is working on a task next to you or to somebody who gave you the task. The only way you can communicate is through the ticket. So you get the task, you see the description of the task, you can ask questions there, you can reply there, but it all stays in one ticket. You cannot go anywhere and call somebody and say, can you help me please? There's nothing like that. You're a completely isolated microtasking environment. The task is your project. Second, we have 0/100 rule. Probably you know that from the management side. 0/100 means that any task which you get is either complete or not complete. There's nothing in the middle. You cannot say, I've been working for a whole day, I made a huge progress, but unfortunately it's not done. It's not done, it's 0, you get 0 money. So it's only 0/100. And that's how it should be, in my opinion. So you remember that. So everything I'm saying is how it works for us. So it's 0/100, which makes it really quite unique, because in most cases you know that programmers are working in a different mode. Number 3 is that we are aiming for really high quality. So everything you contribute to the project, everything you bring back in your pull requests and your branches, we do a lot of quality controls, we do a number of reviews, and we only accept your code if it's as high quality as we want. So there are no compromises. You cannot say, I'm not as good programmer as you guys, that's why I did it my way, so please accept it. You either do it our way, the way the project wants, or you don't do it at all. So it's a really high quality bar, and we easily reject tasks if they don't look as we want, as the project wants. And number 4, we pay for result. So we don't pay for your time. We don't pay, not for you, for the programmer's time. We don't pay per month, per week, per hour. Nothing like that. It's per task. So you get the task, you know the budget for a task, you complete it, you get the money. You don't complete it, you get zero. That's it. So no matter how much time you spend for it, you can spend a day, you can spend 5 minutes, you can spend a whole month. It's still the same amount. That's how we work. And now I'll explain you how we make a decision, how much each programmer costs. And maybe it will help you, to somehow adjust your profile, your career plans, because I think that more companies will work like us in the future. I hope so. So we have 2 steps. Is it clear up to now? Okay, I see some faces which I predicted. So we have 2 steps. First of all, we interview, we get the programmer, somebody comes to us, the programmer from the market. We don't know the person. And first of all, we look at the profile and we make a decision, and we make a decision how much that person costs. I mean, what's the rate, what's the hourly rate for that person? In both cases, people come up with the rate. So they come and say, my rate is 50 euros an hour. That's what I want. And then we make an analysis and we say, no, your rate is actually 35. Or your rate is even more. Sometimes people come to us and say the rate is 10 euros an hour because nobody paid that person more than that before. And we're saying, no, 10 is not your rate. Yours is like 25. So we make our own decision. And if our rate is lower than that person, we just say, you don't deserve 50, you deserve 35, according to our estimate. And then if that developer agrees, then we work. And the second part, which is interesting, is that when we start working, we constantly reassess the rate. So we work, and every month or every few months, the computer analyzes what's going on with this programmer, and the computer says, you know what, the 35 we gave you before is too low, now we are ready for 40. And again, the computer brings it up, and the person agrees or disagrees, stays with us or quits. And we make it public, so we explain to the person why that decision was made, why it was 35 before, and now it's 40. And I'll explain you now how we make that decision. So 2 parts. First, we interview, then we reassess. Let's talk about the interview first. We pay attention to a number of things, 5, I guess, which are important for us. We look at the resume, we look at the profile, and make a decision. First one, open source. It is really important for us to see that the programmer contributes to open source projects, creates open source projects, contributes to them, works in them. That's it. Contributes, works in them, and has own projects. We think there are two parts actually in this approach. First of all, I think that, in my opinion, that if you don't contribute to open source, if you are not there, then it basically means that you don't have enough passion for software development in general. Because the more and more software right now is moving to open source. We are all working, we know that like many years ago, programmers were developing 90% of the code in-house and then getting something from the open source market. Now it's the opposite situation. We're taking 90% of the code from open source and then we add something on top of that and we call it our product. So the majority of code is in open source now, and it's becoming more and more like that. And if programmers do not do anything for that open source, if they just work in that small part of the commercial software, it tells me that they are not really interested in giving anything back to the market, in contributing, in making any changes. They're just, in most cases, working for money, which will be difficult for our model, because if you're not passionate enough, if you don't want to produce high quality, then most of your tasks will be just rejected. You will just do what you think is right, and then you will get a negative feedback from our reviewers, and you will say, hey, I don't want to make an extra effort, walk an extra mile to do this better, I'll just quit. So you just will not be able to work with us if you don't know, if you don't have enough passion for the software development. And second, if you don't contribute to open source, you don't know how it works. You don't know how GitHub pull requests work. You don't know how the reviews work. You don't know how to talk to people who you don't know. You don't know how to push your changes through the review process. You just don't know the rules. If you don't know the rules, it will be very difficult to work with us. That's the problem. So there are 2 sides, and we really pay attention to open source. So the recommendation for you, before it's too late, start doing something in open source. Create your own project, start contributing somewhere, join some team which is doing something for public, and you will see it's a completely different territory. People don't know you, you don't know people, you will have to convince them, you will have to improve your coding style, you have to do a lot of things before you become a professional in open source. If you don't have open source, it's a problem. Second, it's focus. We don't really like people who are just programmers. When we get the resume and it says, I know Java, .NET, Ruby, and Python, we're probably going to give you a very low rate. Because if you know so many things, you don't really know them. So we're interested in people who know specific things. And that people, in our experience, gets more money and they claim higher rates. I once, about 4 years ago, in one project, we were starting to use some machine learning framework in Java, and we didn't know how to do that. We had a team of developers, but they were just Java developers, getting like, 25 euros, $25 an hour or more. And then we needed somebody to help us to use that machine learning framework. We didn't know how to do that. And we found the author of that framework. He was the guy who just specifically, created that framework. He was the author. He knew everything about it. And he wanted $500 an hour. So you see the difference. He was just a Java programmer. But if he would apply to us just a Java programmer regular, he would probably get maybe $50, maybe, I don't know, maybe 100. He was from America. But 500 you can only claim if you have specific knowledge. We didn't hire him. But still, it was too much for our budget. But I still remember that number, 500. We hired people for 200, for 150, that prices we paid. And that's okay sometimes because if you're unique, if you're special, then you deserve that money. So recommendation for you, try to stay focused on one specific framework, one technology, one language, something one, in my opinion. Number 3, location. That's what I wanted to say, that most people who come to us, they think that if they have more expensive apartment, they live in a more expensive area, they deserve more money. Like, I live in San Francisco, how come I'm going to work for $25 an hour? Are you nuts? It's 100 or more. Look at I'm paying for my apartment like 5 times more than you guys do in some Latvia, whatever. But for us, it doesn't matter at all. The market is getting global now. It's not the market of Latvian programmers anymore, or a market of Russian programmers, or a market of American programmers. Now it's just a global market. We're just programmers. And you're sitting here in Riga, I'm sitting somewhere, in Bali. We're almost the same programmers for the employer. The employer who works like we do, remotely, they don't care of where these people are coming from, where they sit, in which time zone even, because we don't have meetings, we don't have talks, we don't need to know where you are. We just need you to contribute back with your code. If you do that, we pay you. If you don't, we don't. So if you live in San Francisco, that's my point. If you live in an expensive area, you have to be way more professional than me living in some Bali or some really inexpensive territory. So if you choose an inexpensive territory, then you can be, a bad programmer. If you want to live in an expensive territory, grow up and become a better professional. Because I think, in our case, we're not going to hire you just because you live in San Francisco or just because you live in Riga. You say, I'm going to charge in euros and my rate is so high because taxes are high here. I don't care about your taxes. It's your problem. My goal is to pay you the amount you deserve. That's how we approach the location problem. Number 4, certifications. It is important for us. Most companies say it's not important. Some people think it's just pieces of papers. I don't think so. We believe that certifications really prove that you managed to fill the knowledge gaps in your education. So if you got the Java certificate, if you got the Microsoft certificate, it means that you actually did the study and you actually read the whole knowledge book for some specific area, like, for example, Java certified programmer or Microsoft solution specialist, or what's the name now. So it means that you actually managed to get the book, read the whole book, and pass the test, answering the questions from different parts of the area. So you don't just know, Java here and Java there, but you know the entire Java, if you claim that you know Java. So certification is really important because they demonstrate that you managed to fill the knowledge gaps. So again, recommendation for you, spend some time, some money, get the certifications. I believe that for companies who work remotely like we do, it's going to be more and more important. Because how else can I evaluate the person from Bali coming and the person from San Francisco? The resumes look more or less similar. They both know some, Spark framework. They know Spark, they know Spark. So how can I compare? Well, one person is certified, another one is not certified. A certified one will cost more for me. I will understand that that person deserves more, for sure. References I didn't say it here, but references and your previous employment, we don't pay attention to that at all. We don't care about that. So people sometimes send me the resume of like 3 pages and there's like lists of projects they've been working for. I pay zero attention to that because I cannot validate that. Well, I'm going to call that people and ask whether that programmer was sitting with you in the office in 2013. Yeah, really? How was him? Yeah, he was great. Yeah, I still remember the guy. What's that? I mean, it's no information for me. It's not valuable. It doesn't really tell me about anything about the price, about your price. So I completely ignore that part. The previous employment, also education, like formal education, previous employment, references, like, hey, you can call this Jeff from Chicago and he will tell you how great I am. Who is Jeff? So why do I trust that Jeff? I mean, there is some friend of you who you had like coffee like 15 times a day. So why do I call that Jeff? I don't care. I care about certifications. I'm going to call Microsoft and ask, do you know that person? Yes, that's the number, you know, the certification number. That's what I can trust. So completely remove that part. That's my recommendation. Completely remove that references and that previous employment part from your CV. It doesn't help at all for me. Well, you can list the projects and say, I was part of, unless the projects are really big. If you've been working for Google or Facebook, then yes, maybe it will make some difference for me. But if it's some mumbo-jumbo company in some, I don't know, somewhere, what does it mean for me? Nothing. So certifications really mean. Stack Overflow profile. I'm getting a lot of complaints about this point, but I'm going to bring it up anyway. Stack Overflow, I think it's really important to see you as a programmer on Stack Overflow and with a high reputation. If you are there, you know the platform, right? Because it looks like not everybody. You have to know the platform. You have to be there. You have to be, you know, somebody there. Not just somebody. Some people. I'm saying Stack Overflow is important, and people are saying me just an empty profile. I have it there. Look, I just created it yesterday. You want it? Here it is. No, it's not about that. You need to be active there. We need to see that you've been helping people there and you were getting help from there. This is the instrument for the modern programmer. This is your main knowledge finding and knowledge providing instrument. This is the way you communicate with the world of programmers. Not sitting next to each other in the office and talking and throwing jokes to each other, you know, and memes. This is not how you communicate now if you're a professional programmer. You talk on Stack Overflow. You have a question, you don't ask your friend. You don't throw the question in Skype. You go to Stack Overflow, you post it there, you format it correctly. You get banned for posting duplicate questions. You get, your questions will be deleted. You will be downvoted. You will have all the problems there. But eventually, you will learn how to use the platform. Eventually. And you will become, bigger and bigger there. You will not be as big as John Skeet, most probably, but you will get some reputation, and we pay attention for that. If you know how to use the tool, in our environment, you will know how to work, because you will work with tasks which are isolated. You will get tasks, you're sitting in Riga, the project owner sits, in San Francisco, and other programmers are in Moscow. So you cannot ask questions. You cannot ask them for help. All you can do is use your own tools, and this is your main tool right now. So if you're not on Stack Overflow, my recommendation, go there, create a profile, and try to ask questions there. Not your friends, not your colleagues, not your Skype buddies. Don't do that, even though it's easier for you in the beginning. Use Stack Overflow. And finally, the publicity. That's what we also pay attention for. If you are writing a blog, if you are speaking at the software conferences, if you are publishing some articles, if you are maybe writing some books, that's really important for us. It means that you know how to convince people. That's the skill we're looking for. You know how to convince somebody who you don't know. Not your Jeff from Chicago who knew you for like a year. Yeah, you were able to convince him, but that's not a big achievement. What's interesting is how, for example, I'm now trying to convince you. That presentation will be on the video, on the YouTube channel, and I will be able to show it to my, maybe the employer in the future, in a few years, and say, look, I was speaking to some crowd, people didn't know me, and I was trying to convince them. Let me jump into your project, and I will be able to convince your programmers if I think I'm right. So this is your skill to convince unknown people to you. So get that skill. If you don't have that skill, if you are just sitting in the office doing no public appearance, it's not really good. Your price will be lower. That's my point. And I wrote a blog post about it. This is the link to the blog post. You can scan it and see. It's like 2 years, 2.5 years ago. It's called How Much Do You Cost? I listed all the things I just mentioned here in the blog post. And the blog is, this is the name of the blog, and this is my Twitter account. You can follow me, you can read the blog. Now we're getting to the second part. The second part is what happens after you are in the project, actually, and we start reassessing you. So what's important for us in your everyday work? So what do we pay attention for? How do we decide whether you deserve more money or you deserve less money? And deserving less money in most cases means that we're going to kick you out, but you will quit. So people usually quit when we lower the rate. They just feel, that they're not appreciated here anymore, that something is wrong. And in most cases they quit. In some cases they stay, and it triggers their, some kind of aggressive reaction. They want to improve. And they really improve. But the majority of people, unfortunately, that's my observation, the majority of people just quit when the rate goes down. But it goes down, and it has to go down, because, we need to reassess people. We can't stay at the same level. That's my opinion. So let's see what we pay attention for, just 4 or 5 things. First, it's speed. What we care about is how fast you close your tasks. This is the primary indicator of your performance. We don't pay attention, we pay attention to the quality of your code. We pay attention to the quality of your code, yes. But in our case, we're not going to accept your code if it's lower than the quality bar. So we cannot say we appreciate quality programmers. We only have quality programmers. We don't have anybody else. So if you join the project, if you write something which is not as good enough for us, your code will not be accepted and you will not get the money. So you're not a programmer for us. You're just somebody who tried to complete the task. So if you actually manage to complete the task, the code goes into the master branch. You're done. So the question is how fast it happened. So how long it take before you get the task, between you get the task and you completed the task. Professional programmers, in our observations, really good programmers, they can do that in 3 days. That's an average number, average. So sometimes more, sometimes less, but an average number is 3 days. Even though our tasks are half an hour, 1 hour in size. So the task is small, but the amount of time it takes to actually complete it, meaning go through all reviews, all the quality controls, everything, it takes 3 days. Because they're working in parallel on many tasks, like 20 tasks at the same time. You have a pool of them of tasks. Each task is small, so on average, you will complete one of them in 3 days. Bad programmers, when they start, it's about 7, 8 days like that. Really bad programmers who cannot work with us, they just cannot complete, and the speed will be like months. So that's the main thing we pay attention. The faster you work, the higher is your rate, obviously. So we are ready to pay you more because you deliver faster and faster and faster. How you achieve that, it's a question for every programmer, how they do that. Sometimes people say that, again, people who just join us, who are not really, who don't know how to work in that kind of an environment, they're saying, I missed some information here. There's something is not clear. Something I need to figure out. Like I cannot complete it faster because the task you're giving me is so, vague and so improperly defined. In this case, we're saying you don't need to stay with one task. You need to put it on hold, and then we don't calculate the time, and then create new tasks asking for clarifications. Like something is unclear in the project, please clarify it for me, and then that bug will be fixed, and you will continue. So you need to create impediments, so-called, if you're professional enough. But people who are not professional enough, they just got stuck on one task and wait, and time just goes by. Second point, we're paying attention to lost tasks. The rule we have is that we give you the task. If you complete it, you complete it. If you don't complete it in 10 days, we take it away from you. So you have just 10 days. If in 10 days you don't close it, it doesn't matter why. You don't know how to do it, you've been working and then you got sick, or you just, you just lost your mouse. It doesn't matter. 10 days, the task goes back to us and we give it to somebody else. And it happens. So sometimes people have that, and sometimes people reject tasks as well. We give you the task, and you're saying it's not for me, I don't like it, it's too difficult for me, I can't complete it. That's also a lost task for us, because we need to get it back and give it to somebody else. So we calculate how many situations you had as a programmer, and the more of them you have, the less we pay you. So ideally, we want you not to lose tasks and finish all of them, no matter which tasks you're getting. Difficult, easy, Clear, unclear, doesn't matter. Discussions. The more you talk, the worse developer you are. That's the idea. So we actually technically calculate the amount of messages you're posting in these tickets. And the more messages you have, the bigger is the problem for us, because you're taking our time. Because when you talk to somebody, that somebody has to answer you. And that means, taking somebody's time for almost no reason. So the ideal developer is just getting the task. It's clear for me. This is clear. I will implement that. This is not clear. I will submit separate bugs. Boom, done, merged, paid. But if the person starts to talk and ask questions and suggest something in a way which is called discussions, we discourage that. We track that, guys, and we calculate, how many messages they post in their discussions, and we downvote them. So we pay them less. So if you want to be a good programmer, I think so, you need to talk in your code, not in your text. So you want to express something, commit the code. If you want to express the problem, submit a bug. You want to improve, you want to help us understand your code, create the documentation. But don't talk, because talks are the most difficult information to understand in the future. When the project goes by and in a year we're going to get back to the problem, we need to read all your discussions. It's not really convenient. It's better to look at the code and see how it works. So the more you talk, the worse you are. Bugs. We want you to find bugs. Programmers, we pay for bugs. So you find the bug, we pay you for it as a programmer. So you open the code, you start working with it, you see some class is not good, you see this class doesn't have a unit test, you see this algorithm is not optimal, you just submit a bug. You create a new ticket. Every ticket you create, you get the money for it. The more tickets you create, the more bugs you create, the better programmer you are. So creating bugs is a really valuable activity for us. Good programmers, they must create bugs. And this is the bugs are actually the source of information for us. They help us manage the project. When there are a lot of bugs coming back from programmers, we know what tasks to give you back. You create the bug, and then this bug will become a task for somebody else in the future. So we need your bugs. And that's why we pay for it. And that's why we pay you more. We increase your rate if you're the person who is creating a lot of bugs. Not creating in the code, but submitting them in the bug tracking system. And the final point, and I'm finishing. The final point is that the more you learn, the more you make, the more money you make, the more we want you to pay. Not the other way around. Because in traditional companies, they say, the better developer you are, the more you earn. In our case, it's the opposite. The more you earn, the more money you make with us. It means for us that you are a better programmer, because you manage somehow to close tasks, more tasks, to close faster, to submit more bugs. So you were able to make more cash. And that means that you're a good programmer. We want to pay you even more. That's the logic. So we actually pay attention to your monthly income. So the more you make with us every month, the more we're interested to increase your rate. Not the other way around. That's what I wanted to say. That's another article which explains the things I just mentioned, how we reassess the rate. And now I want to know, what do you think? Whether you look at this like this, guys, or I'm prepared to answer your questions. I think you will have them. Yeah, really? Oh, okay. Yeah, let's try.
Let's try. Okay, so the most voted question. You keep saying dollars per hour, so the amount of money per hour. But initially you say developers are paid for a task no matter the time. So how does it correlate?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we're using this hourly rate, like 50 euros per hour, in order to make a decision how much to pay for the task. But all tasks are estimated in hours. Let's say we have a small bug, and we know the system decides that this bug costs 30 minutes. So if I give that task for a developer with 50 euros an hour, then it's 25 euros for the task. If somebody else is 40 euros an hour, then it's going to be 20 euros for the task. So we multiply. We use minutes as a metric for budget calculation, and then we multiply by the cost of an hour. So the same bug, the same task for the project may cost different amount of money depending on the programmer it goes for. it goes to.
Okay, so
Why?
Okay.
Why can't we just pay 40 to everybody?
That's what you told us last year, that it's a task, no matter who does it, it's the same.
The same amount of minutes, the same amount of minutes. But the cost of the price of an hour is different for each person. We are getting there. We cannot just make everybody equal, just, the same rate for everybody. It's not going to work. For some people deserve more, some people deserve less, like I just explained. So that's why we have different rates. Why? For same work, exactly. Yes. That would be really difficult to find like completely identical people. Completely identical rates. I think that, but people with higher rates, because they are professional, more professional, they have higher rates, they're more professional, they tend to complete tasks faster, to talk less, to provide faster solutions, to help project more. That's a good question. I don't have an answer. It's just the way it is now.
Very good. Good questions. Okay, the next one. The question is about work-life balance. When you're supposed to leave, if you spend all your time at work plus GitHub plus Stack Overflow?
When you're supposed
to leave, so you won't have any free time. GitHub,
well, actually, it's a good question. In my experience, that's what I've heard from programmers who work with us for years. Normally, they spend 3-4 hours a day for work, and then they just take a rest, because their rates are way higher than what they can get on the full-time jobs. For example, we have people from Philippines, we have people from Ukraine, we have people from India, territories where salaries are not so high, and they are charging like $40 an hour. So they can make in one day like $150, which is way more than they can make in their country in a full-time job. So there's no point in our model to work 8 hours a day. And that's I think how programmers should work. Not 8 hours a day, but 4 hours is completely enough. So this 8 hours work day is not for programmers, it's for some different kinds of jobs. So programmers have to work for 4 hours, that's enough. You cannot think productively for 8 hours. Well, I cannot, especially if you work on someone's code. If you work on your code, yeah, your adrenaline, your energy will help you to get through and you can work for 16 hours. But if you're working on somebody's project and it's not yours, you just spend 4 hours, you get the money, and you get back to your, to something you like, to something you can enjoy doing, like, I don't know, something. So that's my experience. So you don't need to work like full time. People don't do that. You work a little bit, you make enough money for what you need to do, and then you quit. And in our model, people don't need to stay in the project for too long. They can say, I'm on vacation, and the system will stop giving you tasks. And then you stay on vacation for a week, you make nothing, zero, and then you get back and say, I got back from the vacation. And the system starts giving you tasks again. So it's completely up to you. There's no boss who will tell you when the vacation should happen. It will happen when you want it. So you make enough money, then you go on vacation, your money income drops, and then it stays zero, and then it gets back.
Okay, another question. You say that programmers are assessed all the time.
Yeah.
So don't you feel that kind of turns programmers like racehorses? Because programming is programmer's productivity is a daily thing.
Racehorses, yeah, why not? We're all racehorses. We're making money. So it is a competition, definitely. So it is a competition. What's interesting, we make that rates public. So programmers, not public for the internet, but programmers, they see how much they make and how much other programmers make, sitting next to them. So they see, I completed the last month, I completed 100 tasks. And another guy who is working with me, and I know his name, I know his GitHub name, he completed 200 tasks. So I realized that my position in the rating is lower than that programmer. And actually, I didn't mention that. We also pay attention to the position in the rating. So the higher you are, the more interested the computer will be to increase your rate. So if you go up, if you compete like a racing horse, yes, okay, if you call me a horse, doesn't matter. But we are in the rating. Like in Stack Overflow. Are we rating racing horses in Stack Overflow? Maybe not, maybe yes, but they rate us somehow. If you answer more questions, you're going to go up. If you get lazy, you go down. The same for us. So if you want to work faster, if you want to work more productively, you will go up in the rating and you will make more money. I think it's only positive for the competition. The competition is great if the rules are clear. The competition is destroying is the rules are not clear. So when people try to apply some competition to their companies without defining clear rules, that will lead you to disaster and chaos, and people will be completely dissatisfied and frustrated. But if the rules are absolutely clear, then the competition is perfect, especially for professional programmers. That's my understanding of competition.
Great. What if a programmer has a mindset different to yours? Let's say on programming, do we hire for a diversity or skip? Be careful.
I don't really know what they think about programming in general. We don't have that communication. We don't talk. We don't make interviews when I say, what do you think about Java in general? We don't ask that questions. I look at the profile, I see achievements of the person, and I see the price, and that person gets in. Sometimes I don't really know. Some people are sending, instead of resumes, they're sending just their GitHub profiles, and sometimes we don't know their names, we don't know where they're from. We just look at their facts, and if their GitHub profile is full of projects, we just don't want to ask for anything else. Like, okay, you're really an expensive person, we want you to get in. Sometimes we don't even know if it's a man or a woman. It just doesn't matter. We just get this information when the payment information is provided. Like, hey, there's my bank account or my PayPal account. Then we see the full name of the person. So it doesn't matter what they think about in general. They need to be able to deliver the quality we want. That's all. If the quality is good, we don't pay attention to anything else. Well, I mean, in completing the tasks. But some people, I'll answer the question. Sometimes it happens. It happened in the past. When when we started this model like 5 or 6 years ago, we tried to get any programmers there. That was our idea initially, like commodity programmers. Commodity meaning like $8 an hour, 50 guys from India, get in. It doesn't really work because they bring a lot of mess to the project. They start asking completely irrelevant questions. They start some philosophical discussions in the tickets. They try to find me by email. They try to call me. They start doing things which are absolutely, irrelevant and difficult to manage. So you don't expect that from a professional programmer. Like in the ticket, they start to explain what happened to his mom and why this ticket is not closed because of the mom is in hospital, and everybody's like sitting and reading that, and we just don't know what to say. So yeah, and that's why we decided to not hire anybody whose rate is lower than $20. So if your rate is lower than 20, you're just not in. So it's not going to work. You will not be able to really be professional. We just understand that if your rate is $8, then most probably you are in programming for like a year or less. So it's not going to work. So that's the answer to the question. Yeah, not everybody is okay, and if they really have a different understanding, different mindset of what a good programming is and the proper management is, then they are out.
Interesting. Okay, so the market of professional engineers is quite small, and that attitude kind of we know better probably kicks out Zerocracy from the market.
There are not so many programmers on the market.
Yeah,
and
so
that's
kind of
why
you are very opinionated.
Yeah.
And maybe it impacts the adoption of.
Yeah, we don't have. Yeah, that's true. We don't have so many people available for us because. Well, the problem is not that programmers are professional or there are not so many of them. There are many programmers. There are like 10 million programmers in the world. That's the number I know, 10 million or something. I think that professional programmers are extremely lazy now and extremely overpaid and extremely used to do nothing in their offices and still be paid. So they always have an option to just be hired by somebody, do maybe a little bit, like 1-2 hours a week of work and get like a lot of money because the company is afraid to fire them because they know something that nobody else knows. Or they can come to us and work hard, like really closing that bloody tickets every day and really contributing some code and get the same amount of money. Most people say like, yeah, we like what you guys are doing, but this IBM is paying me, the same amount of money, and I barely, see my office like once a week or something. Or maybe I see the office, but I barely open my laptop. I sit in the meetings, and checking my Facebook. That's what I'm doing every day. So what's the point of actually writing code? Unfortunately, that's the situation on the market. So the market is playing against us, not programmers. So if you remove that companies from the market, big companies with big budgets, with big salaries, then people will start coming to us more aggressively. And that's why we pay attention to people who are in open source, because we understand that people, the open source people who are passionate about open source and about software development, they really enjoy writing code. They don't do it because of money, but they really cannot imagine themselves sitting in the office checking Facebook all day long. They just get bored. They really want to write something, to contribute, to be actively developing something. But there are not so many people like that. That's true. There are not so many people in the market like that. When people come to us, that's the statistics. If 10 people come to us and we accept them, then only one person stays. So we only 10%, we accept 10. We look at them, they're all good, they're 10 people, we give them good rates, we say no problem, that's the tasks for you. They start doing something, maybe they complete some tasks, but 9 of them will say goodbye. 1 will stay. And the person who stays are a really good programmer. We really stay with people who are absolutely really fantastic. But it's not so easy to find them. And because of the market. I'm blaming the market, not them. Because they're making the right decision. I mean, come on, why do I need to, I just said, what's the point of writing your code if I can get the same money doing nothing?
Okay, there's another, it's kind of not a question, but a statement more. So you are looking for code monkeys. Work in isolation, don't challenge assumptions, work on small tasks. You don't need the best people for that. So how can it work?
That's a very, very typical claim I keep hearing. Yeah, I actually wrote a blog post 5 days ago, which is called, it's the last blog post of my blog and flow. It's called How Micro Is Your Tasking? It's about microtasking. And the main question there is, are we code monkeys? Because I keep hearing that really, really frequently. In my experience, I thought so. When I started that, I thought that that's why we started this, like I said, commodity programmers. We start getting these code monkeys, please come in and try. We thought that this model will work for code monkeys, for people who ready to work on something and then pay zero attention to what they're doing. But eventually we realized that it's quite the opposite, that professional programmers enjoy this model and immature programmers and young programmers, they don't like it. I think because for professional programmer, it's really important to see the project in a clear form, to see the discipline, to see the logic in what is going on, to see the rules of work, to see that there's my task and there's your task, and they're not connected, they're independent. If I succeed, it's my success. If you fail, it's your failure. It's not our failure. We work independently. I'm a good programmer, you're a bad programmer. I want that to be visible. I want the rules to be visible. I want to know where is the border of my task, where my task stops and your task starts. So professional programmers, they enjoy that way more. And that's why we stopped hiring, cheap people, inexpensive, with low rates, and started to hire expensive people. So that's our practical observation. Like I'm saying, I thought so. That was my prediction initially, that this model will work for code monkeys, but it doesn't. The code monkeys cannot do anything there because they're not really capable of working in a disciplined environment. They enjoy chaos. They enjoy big offices, big teams, group responsibilities, scrum meetings, morning stand-ups, discussions, conversations, opinions, whiteboarding, all the techniques which are perfect for code monkeys because you can perfectly hide your inabilities to actually work, to actually contribute, to actually write quality code. You can pretend to be a good programmer for quite a long time. In our case, it will be visible that you're not a good programmer in 15 minutes. You will just not be able to create a pull request with the code which will pass all the quality rules. That's it. No meetings, no whiteboarding, no discussions, no management, nothing, anything. So that again, my practical observation.
Okay, amazing. So how do developers see the big picture? And in other words, how can you take a holistic view of the system you design?
Yeah, that's also a good question. So even though you work on isolated tasks, even though if I'm a programmer, the tasks come to me and the task number is 1, 2, 3 and I see the description of the task and I'm supposed to contribute the code, I have the access to the entire project. I have an access to all files. I have access to all the documentation. I can read it. If I need it for my task, I'll read it. If I don't need it, I'll just complete what I need to complete and move on. And in most cases, people don't need it. It's not the job of every programmer to understand the big picture. It doesn't matter. It's not important. You don't need to be like that. Sometimes we work with people for a year, and sometimes I hear that in the tickets that people that developer, he's a good developer, he closed a few hundred tickets in the project already, and then in one of the tickets he's saying, I don't really understand how the system works in general, but this part is not, this part I need explanation about. So the guy is working for a year, but he doesn't understand the entire big picture, and he doesn't need that. He doesn't need to understand it. He wants to know his specific, his specifically focused problems, which he needs to solve. So I've seen that many times, and I was like surprised initially, like, really, you're here for a year and you don't know. Sometimes they say, I don't know what the system is for. Like, this is some data processing machine which does something, but I don't care. I don't need to know. I just want this unit test to be written professionally. I want them to be fast, and I want that problems to be fixed. What do you use this machine for? It's not none of my business. Come on. I didn't show that in here, but still, I got the statistics recently that programmers on average stay in one project for 12 months. So that was the last year. There was a review of many programmers. It was on Reddit. I'll post a link later on my slides. So there was a review for how many months on average programmers stay in one project, and then on average it's 1 year. So we change projects every year. So what's the point of understanding the big picture of something you're going to quit in half a year? It's pointless. It's just waste of time. You will just waste your time. You will work on something which doesn't concern you at all. So what's interesting for you, what's important for you, is how, for example, your favorite framework is applied to that particular problem. So solve that, work on that testing part or design part. But the business case, what it's for, again, I think it's for lazy and immature and people who like to pretend being working. Like, yeah, I'm so involved in the project. I'm so passionate about it. I want to know the big picture. Tell me about the business. Tell me about how we're gonna achieve the market success. Who cares? We're programmers. They're business people. We need to separate our responsibilities.
Wow, man, okay. That was harsh. Okay, so let's move on. So we have a lot of questions, and I will continue. Please try answering faster. Are tests part of definition of done? What about high-level acceptance tests that are bigger than your micro tasks? And how do you measure quality of the tests? So are tests part of definition of done? How do you manage larger tests, like acceptance tests, high-level tests?
Yeah, tests, of course. The test is as code as any other code. So test and code, they should go together. So every time you contribute something to the master branch, every time you bring something back to the code base, of course you have to bring it together with a unit test. We don't accept code without unit testing. Of course, the TDD is the absolute basic rule for us. If you need to write a bigger test, if you need to write anything which is bigger than your task, let's say you get a task for half an hour, but you obviously need like 5 hours to implement that, then we allow programmers to make a small increment towards the result, and then mark all the other places in the code with the to-do markers, like to do later, to do later, to do later, to do later, and then return it back to the code base. And then we automatically convert that markers to new tasks and give it to new programmers. So we allow programmers to return back the code in an incomplete state, as long as the code which is coming back passes all the quality checks and is buildable and doesn't violate anything we have here and passes all the reviews. That's our approach.
Amazing. Why do you give so much attention to activity on Stack Overflow? Because most of the questions are already answered, and usually you don't need to be active there.
Yeah, I've heard that many times. Yes, that's definitely true. So on Stack Overflow, definitely, I started to use Stack Overflow when it just started in 2006 or something, and I asked many questions there, and I answered some questions, and now I'm getting like probably a few thousand points reputation every month for just people upvoting my previous questions. That's true. It's a kind of a defect on the platform. It exists, obviously, but still. There are new technologies, there are new products, there are new frameworks, there are new solutions. The software market is not staying put. It's moving forward. So you can always find something new on Stack Overflow. And people who are saying that, they came to me before many times and saying, I cannot make anything on it. Yes, you cannot make a profile of 100K reputation right now in a few months. You cannot. But you can achieve a few thousand K reputation. You can do it in a month or 2 months just by answering Java questions. New programmers are posting there. Some Python questions, new programmers are posting there, or answering, or maybe asking your questions. I keep asking questions on Stack Overflow probably every week when I'm writing code. Even though I'm not an active user right now, active, but I'm getting information a lot from there. I upvoting questions there, and I am posting there as well. So it's possible. Of course, it's not possible to achieve big numbers right now, I guess.
Okay, so we run out of time, and there are like a lot of questions, so you can catch Yegor and ask
yeah, I'll be outside the whole day.
Thank you, Yegor. You definitely deserve some applause.
Thank you.
Great job. Thank you.